Alright, so back here on the 1978 Toyota pickup. So got the engine back out of it because I think after looking at all the dimensions of everything that I definitely needed to get the cross member notched in order to get everything a little bit lower. So yeah, last time you saw that I had the radiator and everything fit in there. You can see I just, hit it with the plasma cutter in order to cut all that stuff off there. So that needs to get cleaned up. I do think that I'll cut these bits out here as well. These will be a pain. There's everything on this thing spot welded in. So trying to find the spot welds through the rust and getting that off there is going to be a pain. But I do think that if I can get it dropped down like another half inch or so, it was pretty close to the hood release, and I'd like to get it just a little bit lower. And I think that it's hitting on these high sides here for the radiator. I don't think these little captured nuts are in the way, but I'll probably remove those just to make sure. And then maybe have to use the air hammer and just sort of hit that down a little bit, because it is sort of curved at the bottom and it sort of ramps up a little bit here. So if I just pound that down a little bit, I think I'll get a bit more clearance. I had like a quarter inch or so to the hood release, and so I'd like a little bit more clearance than that. And so a bit of cleanup and stuff there, but no big deal. Back over here. So as far as this notch, what I ended up doing, so you can see there's it's laminated here, and so I took a piece of angle and I welded, to sort of tack that in place on the bottom, and you can see a couple of the tacks in there as well that I had to grind flat. And so I put that piece of angle in there first and then cut that box out, and then the sides are fully boxed on both sides of it. And so I got 3/16 plate that are boxed on the sides, and then I got these ribs that are in the middle. And so that should get me the rigidity back. Certainly on these sides right here, that's going to be actually stronger than it was before I cut it, because your distance here, if you're looking at the torsional stiffness there, by having those plates here, it's actually more stiff. That's all the way on the inside, so welded all the way around on both sides, so that's stiffer there. The ribs are same 3/16 that the original piece was, and so they're just tacked on the bottom but then welded front and back. So that's going to give me some good stiffness. And then I made a plate here at an angle in order to fit in right here. So you see it's all painted on the inside. So originally I was just going to wait to paint that. As I mentioned before, that I'd just probably drill a hole or something, or maybe I'd get lucky and feed the hose through the top pieces. But now with those plates in place, there's no way that I'd ever be able to paint it on the inside. And so I painted it now, and then I painted the back side of this piece of angle that I got to get set in here. So that's going to set like that. And so what the goal is I'm going to be able to get this piece in here, and then I'll weld all along these seams. I'll weld this side, I'll weld all along here. And so I think so that this piece here is where the engine's got, the oil pan will set down in this little recess. And so the pan's got like a slope on it, so while it doesn't look like I've given myself much, this is only like 1.5 inches here, it doesn't look like there's much of a notch going in here, because this is like 3.5 inches wide, and this is only like 1.5 inches. But because of the slope of the oil pan, by getting rid of this piece here, the slope of the oil pan, instead of hitting like right on this corner here, the slope on the oil pan will be able to sit inside of this gap. So it doesn't look like much of a notch, but in fact, because of the dimensions of the pan, this will actually gain me quite a lot of clearance. And so hopefully this will gain me about 2 inches, because the slope will set inside of here. The flat part of the pan will be pretty close to the cross member, and so hopefully this will be the winning ticket here. So I'm just going to get this burned in. I'll certainly want to get it tacked all the way around real well before I get a bunch of heat into it. Because even though I got this piece of angle on the bottom supporting it and all those other pieces, I don't want to get a bunch of heat into this all at once, so I'll probably get it tacked, run like a couple of little beads, and then I don't have my compressor turned on, but I'll probably turn that on and try to keep this as cool as possible, because I don't want this twisting or doing anything by getting a bunch of heat in it. So, all right. couple of little spots here that don't look great. That's from, like, I just didn't prep the backside of the well. The painting, when it burns, the paint will come through and it'll push, and you'll get these little pinholes through the weld, a little bit of cavitation, which is not awesome, but you know, I got just a couple of them, and there's so much weld area around here, I'm not too worried about it. You know, I'll probably, I don't know, I probably will not grind this down. I'll set the engine in here, and this, like, 1/8 of an inch here maybe will matter, probably won't. You know, there was a bit of a gap, so in between the cross member and this piece of angle, there was, like, you know, a 32nd, or, you know, in some areas like a 16th gap, which is actually good, because then, you know, it's pushing the weld in between those two panels, and there's actually, you can't see it, but there would be a bead up under on the other side, because the weld drips down, and then you end up getting a bit of weld on the back side of the panel, which is good. And so as far as strength, I could probably grind that flat, and, you know, it would be plenty strong. It's kind of, I don't know, I hate grinding, and so I just don't want to do it because I'm lazy. But, you know, I might grind it just because if I set the engine in here and then I need to grind it, I'm gonna hate myself, and so I might just grind that flat just to do it. And then this obviously is not gonna matter at all. I might, you know, hit down. There's a couple of little high spots where, again, like, the fumes from when the paint on the back side of this piece of angle is getting vaporized, and it pushes through, and so then you get those little, you know, impurities on the inside of the weld, which is not awesome to get, but at the same time, like I said, the surface area of the weld is so high that these couple little spots I'm not really worried about, and so it should be fine. So, alright, well, after talking through it, I probably will do some grinding, which is annoying and loud and makes a frickin' mess, and so alright, so that's what I'm doing here. I'll get the engine set back in it. I got to get the transmission mounted on the engine just to make sure. So I've just been measuring for where the shifter comes through, and so, you know, I'll get it set in here. Before I put the motor mounts on, I'll definitely confirm that, you know, the transmission's in the spot that it needs to be as far as the shifter location and all that. So yeah, I mean, this was definitely a necessary step in the process here. And then, you know, like I said, I'm not even kind of worried about the rigidity, because, you know, like, I got that extra piece of angle on the bottom, you know, the plating and the 3/16 angle and everything. Like, this will be probably even stronger than it was when it was a single piece, with the ribbing and the plating and the extra angle in there. So alright, well, I'll get to grinding, get the engine set in there, and clean up the front of the crash bar and everything. So alright, cool. See you in the next one.